Hi Mel, this is our presentation for our sensory tables. So you have Beck, myself, Amber and Katherine for Humanities. So I think Beck's going first. Oh, Amber.
So I have my sensory table at years 3 and 4 because this is the level in which they're beginning to start to be environmentally conscious and start to make their own choices informed by their own sort of knowledge. Furthermore, the concepts of sustainability and land management are more prevalent through the curriculum at this level. I think making this a good starting point for a sustainability unit. My sensory table centers around the use of environment and how our choices can affect it. This includes our use of land and the products in our lives. The scale on the table allows students to explore what is natural versus what is man-made on a spectrum. The goal of this table is to sort of students to identify what's natural and the choices that we can be made to protect nature through everyday choices. The way I sort of structured it is students can go and pick things up, move them around the table rather than having simply being a static pieces. We're going to move on to the next person.
So my sensory table is aimed at grades 3 and 4. So linking to the history curriculum. The aim is for the students to understand the significance of Anzac Day. So really focusing on how it has affected Australia's history. The content descriptors that it links to is about identifying the origin and content features of primary sources when describing significance of people, places and events, and describing the significance of Australian celebrations, symbols and emblems. So when I created this sensory table, I chose to use a variety of items that were relevant to the past. So that the diggers would have that would have been there around Gallipoli, and then current, so what we do to remember and for the remembrance. And we'll move on.
So my sensory table is aimed at grade 6 students and relates to economics and business, and in particular, natural, human and capital resources. So in 2015, Preston ETL described inquiry learning as when students can interact with each item to question and consider different properties or outcomes. So in this case, the natural, human and capital resources used in producing a muffin and its impact on the environment. This links to the curriculum as students in grade 6 need to be able to identify natural, human and capital resources. It also links with the geography descriptors as you can see, there's a map and students would annotate from Victoria where each item is from in different states across Australia. So they're annotating maps. And the last one looks at sustainability, but also the design and technology curriculum. And students investigate different materials and properties and equipment used in the production of the muffins and then evaluate this impact on the environment.
So my sensory table I chose because I'm with preps at my placement, so it's for foundation students, and our current unit of inquiry is centered around properties and origins of products, which is connected to the sustainability content descriptor. Earth's resources are used in a variety of ways. So I kind of wanted it to be inquiry based on the PYP and Vic curriculums mashed together. So it's like a purposefully created creative inquiry planned to help children investigate the world around them, which is from the IB in 2018. So mine is called This Turns Into That, which is referencing the changes that materials go through. And there's also lots of different sensory elements on my table. Yeah. And I've also placed lots of little questions around. So what can you smell, and then what sounds can you make with all of these different things. So prompting younger students to really look at the different properties of each material.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to look at talking about and critiquing each other's and comparing our different sensory tables. So we're going to look at Amber's first. So Amber, we like how there is a wide range of stimuli for each sense. If you were to cater this to higher or lower year levels, how would you change it?
So I think that my activity is a fairly approachable level for lower year levels, where I think that maybe they wouldn't be able to have the knowledge to place them in the order and have those intelligent discussions on is something natural versus man-made. Yeah, they might not understand that refined sugar is, while they might understand it's a food, it's not necessarily a natural food. So I'd probably go and remove the spectrum of there and just have them do some really basics of scientific observations of, this is a branch, this is, this is what do you hear, what do you see, really embracing the sensory aspect. For older year levels, I'd probably have more activities embedded into the activity, providing more reasoning for their choices, and also more contextual clues with regards to why is something natural, why is something man-made, how are honey and sugar different while both being sweet, how can what are these effects of being man-made. So really sort of drilling down into the why is something good or bad for the environment, rather than just simply being natural, man-made.
And how does your table fit with the inquiry model?
So the inquiry model, this is very self-directed, so students as a class can come together, work collaboratively to explore the concepts. They can also bring their own knowledge and their own sort of virtual backpack to this, where saying, oh, I think this because I have this experience, or they can have this connection to self, connection to world knowledge. So they also allows them to explore the space in their own time. I think all sensory tables sort of allow you to explore it as a in your own sort of time, in your own sort of way. Yeah.
I love all the different elements of your table, and it seems like it would be super inclusive. So can you tell us how you've ensured that all students can participate with the table?
Absolutely. So when we're doing this table, obviously I want to go and incorporate all the sense to allow students who have sensory processing issues, or who are maybe blind, who are deaf, they can all participate in some aspect of the table. So just according to in the Hopper textbook and Gilbert textbook, it says teaching and learning the humanities and social sciences should encourage and enable young people to investigate the problems and opportunities in the modern world, to decide what needs challenging and what needs cherishing, and to participate in making the better world for all. So this really allows students to sort of take that first step of the orientation, like Pedaste says, that it's an orientation to be just to go and explore the first steps, and then from there we can have differentiation and multiple exposures, like the hits, like in hits, to then explore the concepts in more depth. But I think that this sensory table really is a really basic starting point that can go and make sure that all the kids are on the same sort of level when it comes to starting this learning. It also, according to McKerney in 2009, which I found in the Gilbert and Hopper textbook, this allows them to ask geographic questions, organize geographic information, analyzing that information, and then from there they can go and do more research-based tasks, acquiring more information, and keeping up with that inquiry cycle further on.
Beautiful.
Awesome. All right, Katherine, we're going to look at yours next. So we love the mix of items, including food, music, pictures, etc., that you've included. It's really awesome. Can you expand a little bit more on why you have labelled the senses, why you chose to do that.
Yeah, so I chose to label the senses. Well, I chose to include like a variety of the music and the food, as like my table doesn't have a lot, but I think the variety and like the music, the smell of the tea bags and the rosemary really make up for only having limited items. I think they're really beneficial items as well. I chose to label them using the senses just to provide some guidance for students around how the item could be used. But this could be limiting to students, as they may want to experiment and play with the items. Like, for example, instead of just touching the the poppy, they might want to smell it. Or instead of just smelling the tea, they might want to mix it with some water and actually give it a taste. I'll expand a bit more on like why I didn't label everything else. So with the labels, I refrained from like labeling this is a bugle, this is headphones for silence, just to provide the students the opportunity to explore and work out what the purpose of each item was. But I would also provide some guidance in regards to why there's
All right, we dropped out with a bit of technical difficulties for a second there, and my camera, this spec, by the way, is not working. Don't know why, but we're just going to keep going. So, Katherine, back to you.
So as I was talking about the labels, so why I didn't include some of the labels. So I would just refrain from labeling all the items to provide students with the opportunity to explore and research why I've included the certain items in the sensory table, but I would provide some guidance around like why those headphones are there. Is it to listen to something, but it's just to listen to the silence? So why would we be listening to the silence? This activity can also assist in building language skills, as Rob et al. In 2016 explains that using the descriptive language about sensory stimuli can improve vocabulary for students, increase their clarity and attention to detail.
So is that part of the inquiry learning that you thought of, Katherine, all sort of inclusive of not telling the kids, too much information about every item there?
Yeah, so really when I'm introducing the sensory table at first, I would just refrain from explaining the purpose to some extent and the significance of each item, to allow the students to just play with them, have a go at the bugle, taste the Anzac biscuits, and then have this play and experimentation prior to beginning to research and delve deeper into, okay, so we're looking at Anzac Day. Why is there poppies here? Why is there a bugle? What significance? Why is there rosemary? And provokes them to research and delve deeper into the significance and the meaning behind each of the items. So really, through the stimuli and their research, creating and researching on their own to come to those decisions and meanings. Yeah.
Beautiful. So if we move on to Beck's lovely table, it made me sort of wonder about what other subjects you could link your table into, because it seems like you've got lots in there.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in my little introduction before, it links in with sustainability. So where students can investigate how the different components and tools and machinery used can impact on the environment. So things like carbon emissions and all of that, they can investigate into that thing in food miles. And it also links really nicely into the maths for the Year 6 curriculum, which there's a descriptor under, geometry, where they look at solving problems involving the comparisons of lengths, so using approximations. So when they're looking at the map of Australia and they're drawing like from Victoria to the Queensland is where sugar travels, they can guesstimate like how many kilometers that would be, and then they can research it and they can translate it from like kilometers to meters to centimeters, etc. So just linking in with the maths knowledge as well. Yeah.
So yeah, I see that yours is like a really high level, like up in grade 6. How would you differentiate your learning to cater to the younger year levels?
Yeah, so obviously like natural, human and capital resources, I think builds on like what you were talking about earlier, Amber, where lower year levels are looking at like man-made versus natural products. So I would just go back to that step. So for example, for foundation students, keeping it simple, like man-made is the muffin and natural is the banana, and just looking at those kind of aspects. Yeah.
So I really like the set out of your table. So how would you make it engaging for the whole class at once?
Yeah, so obviously there's quite a few items, but not enough. The whole class could do it at once. So I think I'd either have like multiple of the same table set up around the classroom. So students could be in small groups and all engaging in the activity, or at least one item at a time, and sharing them between one another. Or another option would be to have different stations set up. So one of them is a sensory table. Another one, for example, is that maths activity where they're estimating the kilometers taken and all of that. So there would be different stations, and they would just move around within like a 1 hour lesson, 20 minutes on each one, and move around so they all get enough time to look at each item.
Awesome.
Now we're moving to yours, Sarah. So we can see that you have so many different items, which is awesome. It's just so many different senses engaged there, which is really cool. What teaching strategies come with this?
So I sort of centered it around what Reynolds in 2019 talks about. So that the importance of inquiry learning is to have a strong conceptual underpinning to the unit. So with my table, we've actually done lots of explicit teaching on the processes and properties of materials with my preppies. So the explicit teaching is the first sort of teaching strategy. And then from there, now we have the table that would incorporate collaborative learning, and then lots of questioning from students, and then from the teacher to the students, which is kind of as a formative assessment as well, chucked in there. And then feedback as well. So from the teacher while we're going around the table, and also feedback from students to students, like in discussion, you know, answering each other's questions.
Yeah, so you mentioned this would sort of fit into a unit of inquiry. What would you think would be your sort of next step after this table in the unit of inquiry?
Yeah, so I reckon because we've already done lots of that explicit teaching on actual products, what products are, what materials are, what properties are, like soft and hard and whatnot. And now they're doing the investigation on the table where they can, you know, see the sand and the glass and the beginning and the end. Like this turns into that, the whole sort of idea of the table, and like, you've got your wood and then the cardboard and paper, so you can see the beginning and ending of processes. So I think I'd want them to use the table to take, you know, pick a couple of different relationships. So say the glass, the glass comes from sand, and then investigate that further. And maybe we'd pick one as a class, and then really investigate the process of how sand comes from our beach, and then how it turns into, say, a window. Yeah, I think that would be cool.
So if you were teaching alone, how would you monitor all the items at once?
I think with a prep class, say with like 20 kids, it could be absolute chaos with this table, and it could be a bit of a mess by the end. But with my class specifically, I would use our classroom agreement, which comes from the IB and PYP learning. So we have a manner in which we behave in the classroom, and I would what tends to work with the kids is overarching questions like, how do we treat the sand? How does a respectful student play with the sand? Or, you know, would I throw this around the room if I was being a respectful student? And I think I would also model like myself as a student walking around the table and asking myself questions. So say like picking up the little container of stones, and I'd be like, what sounds can I make from this? And picking up the say mint and be like, oh, what can I smell here? I think that works really well with young kids to see you model it first.
Awesome. I feel like all our tables really link in with the inquiry model, where they're all play-based and kids can have the freedom to touch and feel and smell and explore all the different senses, which is really cool. And Amber, I think yours and I are almost building upon one another's, where it starts with looking at natural versus man-made and then moves on to like what a grade 6 would do with natural, human and capital resources and things. So
Absolutely. And I think a lot of them really do spark a lot of questioning about, what it means to be natural, what it means to have to be processed, and stuff like that. So if you go and have the students in the classroom, they can take it in so many different directions. They can go and take apart and be like, if I take apart a processed thing, how do I make it? Or having a raw material, you can go and like put it back together, what can I make with this? And so I think it really sort of invites a lot of questioning, as well as some of ours also have like a really good metacognition aspect, where we're asking them to really think about their learning as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for say like Katherine's and Beck's, there's a real sense of process there, and especially with Katherine's with the history, like how do each of these things link into our history? I think that's awesome. And then Beck, I just love the idea that it's centered around banana muffins. I think that's so cool, because like Amber and I have done super broad, whereas you guys have really taken it to a pinpoint and wanting the kids to go broader from there. I think that it's cool that we've all approached it in different ways.
Yeah, I love the variety of everyone's tables. Like we've all done a sensory table with humanities in mind, but we've all taken it in such different aspects that we can all, from this, take it into the classroom and really, use the sensory table to really expand our students' learning.
I agree. I kind of wanted to ask everyone a question. I wanted to see like what questions or one or two questions that you would want your kids to ask from seeing your table. So maybe
that's
Amber
a really
first.
good question.
So I think I'd like them to ask, or not so much ask, but more debate is this natural? Is a wooden block natural? Yeah, it's been processed in that way, but it is still a very raw material. Is a recorded sound being processed? You're not going out into the real world and hearing it, but you're still seeing it. So things like that, and like eucalyptus scent, natural, not natural, and just having that really sort of like nuanced discussion and really drilling down on what the actual definition of natural is and how they define natural versus man-made and processed.
What about Katherine?
I think I really want the students to take away what it would have been like. We've been very sensitive around war, especially at the moment, but what it would have been like being a digger at Gallipoli. So feeling that dirt and just really putting themselves in those shoes, and just thinking about how it would be being away from family, and just putting themselves in a different pair of shoes, and just questioning that.
I think for mine, I would really want the grade 6s to question the process behind it. So yes, like we can identify that wheat is natural and flour is a capital resource and the machine's used, but like how? So what happens when you put wheat into the machine? How does it work? So looking at that kind of like engineering side of things, and how does natural turn into man-made products? Yeah. What about you, Sarah?
I don't know. I think my preps at the moment they're just fascinated by changes that natural things go through. So that's why I've popped the leaves in there, like the healthy leaves from a maple tree versus all the ones that have been falling at my house. Like I know that they would just be fascinated by how different they are, the textures and things like that. So I just want them to ask how this happens and why this happens, like those real open-ended questions. Hearing them from preps is really good because you know that they're thinking.
Yeah. Awesome. I feel like we're good. Good job, everyone.
All right. So we might just have a quick look at the references that we all cited throughout the presentation. Beautiful. And whoever's marking,
Yeah,
thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks.